You want to be in the video, you want to be famous. Panda wants to be famous. No? Okay. My name is Joas and this is the second video in my series on taking acting classes to work on my social anxiety issues. The last episode I mentioned that I was watching Ozark. My favorite character is Ruth Langmore, and I found out that the actress Julia Garner that plays the role of Ruth took acting classes when she was 15 to overcome her shyness. That's why she started acting. She said she had a hard time talking as a kid, and she liked acting because she could say other people's words. It's kind of interesting. It's almost as if she learned how to express herself through her characters. And this was, as I mentioned in the previous video, one of the reasons that I wanted to try acting is to, learn how to express myself. And I hadn't thought of it in this way, that you kind of pretend to be someone else and you express these people's emotions. You really get into your character, and this way you can also learn how to know yourself better and how to express yourself. So I thought that was encouraging. I don't think I'm gonna win an Emmy anytime soon, but it's cool to hear stories like this, to see the potential of what I'm doing right now. The days after the first class, I had to kind of process what happened, because this was such an intense experience. Kind of stays with me for a while. And then my mind, because I feel rejected in some way, I wasn't actually rejected, but this is something that happens in my mind. I didn't come across as I wanted to, so blah 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 stuff. My mind comes up with these stories of why I should quit. It's like, I tried it, it's not for me, or it's too much for me at the moment. That was also one of the thoughts that I had. That's interesting, my mind was rationalizing quitting. I wasn't blaming myself for what happened per se, which is good because that can often feel worse. And I started writing this down also because I was documenting my experience to make these videos. And when I wrote it down, these thoughts largely disappeared. And I often say that the best place to worry is on paper, meaning that writing can be very helpful to process experiences. And once again I showed that this works very well for me. Still, I don't write very often. I don't know why. I should do it more often. Despite the pen therapy, I still wasn't looking forward to going in the day of the second class. I was not excited at all, and I was feeling quite nervous actually. But I knew that quitting was not an option for me. I have cancelled many plans in the past because I was feeling too anxious, or feeling too anxious, if that even exists. Because there's always an option to go with your anxiety. And that's what I'm doing right now. I think it's best not to blame yourself when you do quit, because it's not very helpful. Usually quitting gives you a moment of relief, but I don't think that lasts very long. And once that initial relief is gone, the feelings of regret start flooding in, and you can really start to feel bad about yourself. But my advice would be, if you quit, don't blame yourself for it, and you did the best you could at that moment. And the most helpful thing you can do is to reflect on it and to see how can I ask yourself, how can I prevent this in the future? And I think writing helps a lot with that. I didn't sleep great the night before the class, and that can definitely affect how much stress I can handle. And I wasn't really feeling it, and my girlfriend noticed, and She gave me some support, she gave me a hug. And for me at that moment, it was hard to receive the support. I think maybe I was just feeling bad about myself this day, and it's almost as if getting support is showing weakness. I think Paul McCartney said it great in Hey Jude. He said, "It's a fool who plays it cool." And I always, when I hear that song, I feel like it's directed at someone who can be vulnerable. But maybe it's just me projecting my own ideas onto the song. When I started driving, I felt pretty nervous again. I also don't really like driving. It's just very odd to sit in this closed up space going 100 kilometers an hour. So that doesn't really help. This time in the car I started listening to Boris Brejcha. He's my favorite techno minimal DJ. It's really high energy music, and that put me in a good mood. That was my dog. She doesn't really know what I'm doing at the moment. But yeah, I got into a good mood listening to that music, and I could feel some excitement. Not about the class per se, but it was more that I was excited that I was going again. I was putting myself in this uncomfortable situation for me to, to improve my life. And that's really something to be excited about, I think. Not all good things are enjoyable. I don't expect it to be, very uncomfortable the entire course. And this was only class 2, so I expect it to become more relaxed. But if I'll enjoy it, I am not really sure about that. But that's not really the point sometimes. Again, not all good things are enjoyable. In the first video, I discussed the dilemma between medication and supplements, and for this time I decided to run the experiment and to take a supplement instead of the beta blocker. What I didn't know was how much more anxious would I get if the supplement didn't work, so how effective was the medication. So it was kind of a gamble, but I was motivated by this, the idea of making a video about it, so why not just give it a go. I decided to combine ashwagandha, the supplement that I mentioned last time, with L-theanine. And L-theanine is a compound which is also found in green tea, and that's why it's said that green tea doesn't make you as jittery as coffee. So it's kind of synergistic with caffeine, is how they explain it. And I have used this combination of theanine and caffeine. This also exists in supplement form. And I noticed that it doesn't make me so anxious as just caffeine. So it does seem to work. The evidence for it is not as strong as that for ashwagandha, and Examine.com, they cite that L-theanine, reduction in anxiety, stress, and greater ability to relax is its most likely effect. And while still somewhat preliminary, studies suggest a benefit for these purposes. So, it's worth a try, let's say. My plan was to take the first dose in the afternoon, and then to take another one an hour or half an hour before the class actually started. And I took 300 milligrams of ashwagandha and 200 milligrams of L-theanine twice, which kind of adds up to a normal daily dose of both of these supplements. So then I went to my barber's appointment with my barber Melvin, and I mentioned that I was doing the acting classes and why I did it, to work on my social anxiety issues. And he said that I always look very comfortable I don't look very nervous when I'm in his chair at our appointments. And I told him that, yeah, this is because I feel very relaxed around him. He's been cutting my hair for years now, and he's also an introvert. For me, it's sometimes extroverts can be a little too intense. I don't know, maybe you get what I mean. And he designed his schedule in a way that he has his own shop, and it's always empty when he's cutting hair, because that way he can have nice conversations with his customers. And this is actually what he likes most about the job. And he doesn't even want to call people customers, because he often sees them as friends. So you can kind of guess why I feel really comfortable around him. And in a different barber shop that's full of people, I would definitely not feel the same level of comfort. After my haircut, I still had some time to kill, so I went to the public library to read a little bit. And when I entered the place where the classes take place, I was still pretty early, and I just read a little bit until my classmates started coming in. I think that getting early can help you kind of land in the place. You know, you're also there in a situation that's not so stressful. I was just sitting at a table reading a book. And I think that it helps your brain associate the place with things other than high stress. And this concept is used in, for example, productivity or sleep. One of the best ways to improve insomnia is to limit the time you spend in bed laying awake, because your brain kind of associates the bed with this anxiety of, oh, I can't sleep, I have to get up in a few hours. And so the advice is to lay awake for a maximum of 15 minutes. If you can't sleep, you get up and you come back to bed once you feel sleepy again, and then you try again. So this way you'll spend more time in bed actually sleeping, and you don't have to do all that laying awake. And I do think this is a very helpful concept in general to keep in mind, that when something happens often in a physical environment, your brain starts to predict and anticipate that thing. So you go to the bedroom, your brain starts to anticipate that there is something wrong there, and you start to get anxious. So the same can be for a location where you have a social interaction. Every time you go there, you feel very anxious because you're immediately talking to people, and your brain just starts to associate this place with that anxiety. And I think if you're early, you kind of land in the place, and your brain kind of gets the message, like, oh, it's pretty okay here. I think it's a good concept to keep in mind. When the class started, I felt quite at ease with just a slight touch of nerves. It was definitely a lot better than the week before. And we started with a warm-up exercise, which was actually a lot of fun. We had to send, one person started sending a samurai sword to someone in a circle. We were stood in a circle saying, "Ho!" It was an imaginary samurai sword, by the way. Maybe you're thinking that's pretty dangerous. And the person that it was aimed at had to catch it saying, "Chi!" And then the two people on the side had to chop it up saying, "Ha!" And then the person that caught the samurai sword had to send it to the next person. And in the beginning we were doing this in a pretty slow pace, so that we could get used to kind of get the rules of the games and when do you have to act. But at some point we were going really fast. And if you think at that moment, then you just snap out of it and you start making mistakes. So it kind of reminded me of last week, the previous week, where I would be thinking so much that I couldn't pay attention to what was happening around me. Only in this warm-up exercise it had much more immediate consequences, because the moment you're in your head and, you know, someone throws you that sword or someone next to you gets that sword, you make a mistake because you're just not paying attention. It was almost like a concentration meditation where, you know, you're playing the game, and the moment that you notice that you're lost in thought, you just bring your attention back to the game and you continue playing. You kind of train your attention in that way. In the days prior to the class, I came up with another intention. So in the previous video I mentioned the intention to be present and not try to solve the exercise in my mind, which I could put to the test immediately with this warm-up. And the other intention that I thought of was I want to make a fool of myself. And that doesn't mean that I want to purposely make a fool of myself, but if I want to fully commit to the class, then I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to look silly. So the intention was, just to go for it and, you know, to look stupid sometimes. And in this warm-up exercise, of course I made mistakes. I got lost in thought and, you know, people were staring at me because it was my turn. But I could kind of, just let it slide more easily. I think that intention definitely helped. And I think what also helped was the fact that everyone else was also making mistakes and we were all laughing. It was actually playing, you know. The last episode I talked about the state of playing, and this was definitely it. I think my dogs also want to play at this moment. After that we did some mirroring exercises where you would have to mirror the person standing across from you. This is the stuff that you see often in TV shows when one of the characters takes acting classes. You know, you see them across from each other moving like this. And then we did an exercise where we would have to say something with growing intensity. So more intense movement and also higher volume, up to the point where we were almost screaming. And we had to do this with something angry. And somehow this didn't feel uncomfortable for me to really be screaming from the top of my lungs almost. And afterwards I was thinking like, that's interesting, you know. It's hard for me to express stuff, but this thing felt kind of natural. It felt almost liberating. So that was kind of interesting. Then we went into the break, and there was a woman who's also taking the class. She told her that her therapist recommended her doing acting classes, so that was interesting. And I also said that one of the reasons that I took these classes was for the therapeutic benefits. And then the teacher said something like, that's not the intention of this class. And somehow my mind was interpreting this as a rejection of the reason that I was there. And I almost felt like I had to tell her, hey, you don't have to treat me any differently or do something special here. And then afterwards we started again with some other exercises. I felt more nervous and I was trembling again, and I'm still not sure if that was because of what happened in the break or maybe it was just the supplement that was not working anymore. Anyway, we did improvisation exercises after that, and they went fine. It was a bit uncomfortable because I was trembling and I felt a lot more nervous than in the beginning, but it went fine. This time I didn't want the class to be over as much as I did last time. And by the end of the class I still had a lot of energy. So that was a big contrast with the week before. I was kind of wondering why that would be. It could be that the medication that I took the first time, it lowers adrenaline, and adrenaline is energy. It's necessary for mobilizing your body. So it could be that, but it could also be that I was just way more relaxed this time. Even though in the break I got kind of nervous again, but the first half of the class was way more relaxed than the first time. And there's all this tension and trying to stay composed and look confident. It's cost so much energy, and this week I was just not that occupied by this. So I think that definitely helped a lot. I think that in the coming weeks the exercises will get more intense, so I'm curious how I'm going to respond to that. And I'm just very curious about the next classes and how I'm going to feel, and can I feel even more relaxed. I say to be continued. As for medication and supplements, please don't take my word for it, because this is just me doing my own research and trying to find something that works for me. I recommend talking to your doctor or your therapist to see if something like this will fit your situation. And if you want to take a supplement, to do some research, check out contraindications. Ashwagandha has some of those. I would still recommend examine.com for these two supplements. And I also wanted to say that the reason that I take these things is to collect positive experiences. And this makes sense if you think of what I said before. I want my brain to associate a situation or a place with something more positive, something more relaxed. So I take a medication that lowers my adrenaline, which makes me feel more relaxed. And every time I go to a class and I get this experience of, it's not that bad, it's not as much of a threat as you thought. So this is sort of an error correction for your brain. Your brain predicts a threat. You're in the situation, it turns out to be less of a threat, because your adrenaline is lower, which is a sign for your brain, like, oh, maybe this isn't such a terrible situation to be in. And these things get stored in your memory, and your brain starts to associate these situations with more relaxing states, and starts to predict these things. So the next time you're going to be in that situation, it's going to be easier. And my end goal is to be able to get into those situations without using anything, no medication or supplement. That's I think what you should aim for, also in order to not get dependent on taking these substances. I hope you enjoyed this. The next one should be out soon.